Well, a very full and interesting day so far, and another keynote which I'm sure is going to be really captivating. Thank you for fitting it in. It's a busy schedule today and lots of competing demands. But following this, of course, there'll be a visit to the University of Cambridge Primary School. So, it's my privilege and a slightly daunting one, I must admit, to introduce our next keynote, Alison, Professor Dame Alison Peacock. I should explain for our visitors from overseas, Dame is a rather quaint but highly distinguished honour conferred by Her Majesty the Queen. So if you get to shake Alison's hand, you'll share that experience with our reigning monarch. Please form an orderly queue. An old Hollywood line goes, "There ain't nothing like a dame." And certainly it would be hard for most of us to match Alison's achievements. Her professional career began with teaching in a very challenging secondary school, one that quite recently was the subject of a fascinating and very successful TV documentary series. By this time, however, Alison had worked in 2 secondary schools, 2 teachers' centres for continuing professional development, and 3 primary schools. Alison has had a long association with our faculty, I think over 20 years, combining action research, and professional development. She was a key player in 2 major projects, Learning Without Limits and the Cambridge Primary Review. And can I interject with a commercial? Do please visit our Dewey exhibition in the library, which documents both of those important projects as aspects of continuing Deweyan influence in the 21st century. Alison, like John Dewey, has worked at bringing a credible synergy between research and practice. Above all, it was as head of the Roxham School, head teacher of the Roxham School in Hertfordshire, not far from Cambridge, that she led one of our led a school out of what we call special measures. This is a delightful English bureaucratic euphemism for what other people might call a failing school. It was a situation which has echoes, I think, of Barbara Stengel's account yesterday of Bailey School. Alison's approach was through Learning Without Limits as an inclusive and creative approach to school improvement that has generated international interest and has had visits from all over the world. I need say no more about that. It's Alison's topic this afternoon. Alison.
Thank you, and thank you for that very kind introduction. It is such an honour, I can't tell you, it's such an honour to be here talking to you today. I'm going to start with introducing you to an 11-year-old girl called Louisa. Louisa is going to play a piece for us. The piece that she's going to play is the piece that she played in our summer concert as she finished at the end of Year 6 in our school before moving on to secondary school. And the film was made 2 years ago now. But I want to show this to you because I believe, and I know you believe, that education is about so much more than the things that are easy to measure. So let's just meet Louisa. Now, the reason I share that is, one, because it really just moves me, and I think she's just so amazing, but also because when Louisa played that piece at our summer concert, I happened to look across and see Kayla. Kayla was also in year 6 at the time, Kayla also learning to play the violin. And the look of admiration on Kayla's face as she watched her friend play. And I subsequently found out quite recently that Kayla herself performed that same piece in her secondary school very recently. So that notion of children inspiring children, it's not, colleagues, all about us. You know, schools need to be places where we are collectively inspired to want to learn. And of course, you know, Louisa shows real talent and expertise. But the Kayla factor is about what happens when you are inspired and you keep trying and you keep trying because you want to do something because you've seen someone else do it. And if education isn't about that, then I'm not sure what it is about. You can see on the screen the various books that I've been involved with in terms of Learning Without Limits, very much centred in Cambridge, working with colleagues here, Mary Jane Drummond, Susan Hart, Donald McIntyre, Mandy Swan. The most recent book, Assessment for Learning Without Limits, is the story of lots of schools, not only in this country, but mainly in this country, that have started to take on the ideas of learning without limits, which means not labelling children, not viewing ability, whatever that concept really means, ability as being fixed. The idea that school needs to be somewhere where we keep the door open for every learner, whether they are the child or the adult. And these are the core principles that underpin the ethos within my school and within the schools that are starting to work in this way. The idea of trust being fundamentally important. And of course that Deweyan principle of agency, fundamental, co-agency, children and teachers, teachers and children, working together to create an environment for learning where nobody feels limited, nobody is ranked, nobody is diminished by somebody else's success. So we talk about things like personal best, you know, constantly wanting to achieve more. Now, within this environment, within a school that was in special measures, as we've heard, you know, I was listening yesterday, and of course, the stories of Bailey, we didn't have anybody being shot in Potter's Bar, so I was quite relieved about that. On the other hand, you know, the school when I went there was in great difficulty, and it had been labelled as a school that was failing. And as soon as you get a label of failure, it's hard to move beyond that. So the children, the teachers, the parents felt they were in a school that had lost hope. And going in as a head teacher, it was my job to try and say, well, what can we do here? And I had a vision for the school, which was to say, it shouldn't be like this. And I remember going for the interview and saying to the governors, I had to do some slides for my interview, and I had to produce a vision for what the school was going to be like in 5 years' time. This was my task at interview. And I said that the school was going to become a centre of excellence. And I think at the time when I said that, probably the governors looked at that and went, ah, bless. You know? But actually, what happened was the school improved dramatically because we focused on a curriculum that was irresistible. We focused on creating what we described as a listening school. A school where ideas could flourish. A school where people weren't blamed. So yes, I think there were lots of similarities. When I was listening yesterday to the ideas around in Bailey, that notion of a collective endeavour, where it's not someone's fault, it's about what can we all do to find a way through to help. So in illustration of that, I just wanted to show you the story of one child. When I was first at the school, in the first term of being head teacher, a parent came to see me, and she said, Mrs. Peacock, in this school, my daughter Rebecca, in Year 4, is being massively overlooked. She is a very, very clever girl, and this school is not noticing that. And I listened to this parent, and I was obviously concerned to hear what she was saying. I had loads of parents coming to see me. You can imagine in that first term, there were all sorts of issues around fights on the playground, children running off site, windows being broken, all kinds of things. But this particular parent said, "You're really massively underestimating my daughter." And when I looked at what was happening in that classroom, the teacher was labeling the children by ability. She's grouped the children by ability. And in English lessons, they had cards on their tables. So they sat in groups, and they had cards on their tables. And I went in, and in the English lessons, the lowest group were called, without any sense of irony, the full stops. So there was the full stops group, rising to the dizzying heights of the exclamation mark. So each group had got this sense of, this is where we are, this is where we stay. And Rebecca was a member of the full stops. Now, in my leadership of Roxham, I've never been the kind of head that's come in and sort of said, right, everybody needs to go, everybody out, we'll start again. You know, it's about growing the community that you've got. But the one teacher that did need to leave was the teacher in Year 4, because I rapidly realised she didn't like children. I find this a problem. You know, any teacher that doesn't like children. And so she was the teacher that, after 2 terms of my headship, she moved on. We'd come off special measures, and she left the school. And we appointed Simon. And Simon became the deputy head, and he's now a head teacher in Barnet, just outside London. And he was really an exceptional teacher. He's a poet, but he also loved science and mathematics. And Rebecca was in his class for 2 years. This is Rebecca at Imperial College 2 years ago, Young Engineer of the Year. Now, I'm not saying that Rebecca's achievements at Imperial College London are all to do with what happened in our primary school, except that I am saying, had she not had Simon as her teacher, had she not had a teacher who listened to her, who understood what she was capable of, who enabled her to flourish, then the chances are she would not have done well in her tests at the end of primary school, which would probably have meant that she would have gone to secondary school and be put in the lowest class, which would probably have meant that she wouldn't have had the opportunity to pass the exams, to go to the Imperial College in the first place, leave alone to achieve this. So when I'm talking to colleagues about learning without limits, I'm talking about life chances for children and the difference that we make when we get things right. And the idea that we actually make the future when we believe that amazing things are possible. Similarly, I had a parent who came to see me. I'd been at the school a couple of years. By this time, we'd been judged to be an outstanding school. The school was oversubscribed. Lots of people were interested in our school, and we had a reputation for being very inclusive. And a parent came to see me, and she said, "Mrs. Peacock, I would like my daughter to come to your school." And she told me that her other children weren't coming to our school. They'd gone to the school down the road. She hadn't chosen our school for her other children. I thought, oh, really? And she said, no, because the thing is that Miriam, my daughter, she has special educational needs, and we think your school would be the best school for her. Now, the problem is, when you get known for being an inclusive organisation, that can become quite a pressure, because if everybody that comes to your school says, well, they've got additional needs, that can be quite difficult. And I said, well, if your daughter really loves routine, and she said, yes, she does. She really likes things to be ordered and quiet. I said, well, let's just go and have a look round. So we walked around the school, and some of the children were outside in the forest doing forest school. All our children do forest school every week in our school. Some of the children were doing all kinds of things. They might not necessarily have been based in the classrooms. There was a big double-decker bus on the playground, which you'll see later, which is also a library, a music garden made out of junk metal, all kinds of things. And we came back to my office, and I said to Miriam's mum, you see, we're not a very calm school. We're quite a lively school, and we're very creative. And if your daughter really likes routine, you know, is this really going to be the best place for your daughter? And Mum said to me, yes, but I think you will love her. So I said, okay. So she came to our school, and Mum had told us that Miriam was going to need a padded room. She said, you're going to need a room and 2 adults to calm her down when she has a meltdown. It is at this point, colleagues, when you think, oh, do we have to? Anyway, so we welcomed her to our school, and she didn't have many meltdowns in the first term, but what she wouldn't do was any kind of writing or any kind of mark making. She just refused. So she was enjoying all kinds of things going on in our reception classroom, and she was starting to play in parallel with other children, but she wouldn't write anything, she wouldn't draw anything, she wouldn't get great big paints or tiny little pens, she wouldn't mark make, she wouldn't take the shaving foam and make pictures, until in February when she drew this. And this was the first time in our school that she had drawn anything. And the point is, this was the first time she trusted us to show us what she could do, because this is not the first time that Miriam has drawn a picture. It's the first time she trusted us. It took from September to February before she could let us see that she could draw. And if we had more time, we would talk about this drawing, and we would look at this drawing, and we would see just how joyful this drawing is. And I remember Lynn, who's the teaching assistant who was working in the class at the time, bringing a photocopy of this round to my office, because it's a picture that's done on a whiteboard with a black felt pen. And I just remember thinking, she's happy. Because you can't learn if you're not happy. You might need to have a bit of frisson. I was kind of quite nervous sitting down there with Julia before I got up here. You need a bit of a frisson to kind of... But if you're terrified, you can't learn. And if you're unhappy, I don't think you learn well. And this is a happy drawing. This is a picture that she drew when she was in year 1. This is her as a superhero. And there's a whole page of writing that went with it. And I'm just going to show you now a little film clip of Miriam in year 2 talking about her learning. Because what we do in school, we've said we're a listening school, and I realise increasingly how important dialogue is within education. So I'm going to show you a little tiny film clip, just filmed on an iPhone, of Miriam talking to her teacher. And this is so that when her parents came to the family consultation evening, they would be able to see their daughter talking about her learning.
So Miriam, do you enjoy school? Yes. Yes. What do you like? What's your favourite lesson?
Is phonics.
Phonics. You like phonics. Why do you enjoy phonics?
Do swimming lessons.
Because you like learning about letters?
Yes.
Do you enjoy art?
Yes.
You're very good at art, aren't you?
Yes.
So what do you enjoy about art?
Painting.
Painting. That's lovely. Is there anything you find tricky at school and you'd like more help with?
Yes.
What would you like more help with?
Handwriting.
Some handwriting. Well, your handwriting can be very neat, can't it? You've got a lovely handwriting. Would you like to say goodbye to everyone?
Goodbye.
Bye.
The point is that in many schools, Miriam probably wouldn't have lasted more than a couple of weeks, because had we in our school said, okay, now's the time to pick up your pencil, now's the time to pick up your pen, we need you to practice writing your name, she didn't want to do it. We just said, we're the leaders, we're the boss, we're the school, we're in charge, who do you think you are, not doing what we're asking you to do? You know, too much of that kind of stuff goes on too often. And I think probably her mum was very, very wise when she decided that her daughter needed to come to our school, because chances are the school down the road where the brothers and sisters go might have been a school where they wouldn't have tolerated waiting until February until Miriam was ready to trust us to show us what she could do. But for me, every child like Miriam that thrives in school and is successful in school will be what I will remember when I retire from teaching. It won't be however wonderful it was to go to Buckingham Palace, and it absolutely was wonderful to go to Buckingham Palace. It won't be that I will look back on. I will look back on children like Miriam and think, what happens in school when we provide space for people to flourish? Because I think that's what education is about. And of course it's about democratic engagement, and we've been talking about democracy for the last 2 days, and interestingly this morning we were thinking about, in the session that I was in, you know, is it about structures? Is it about formalized methods of asking for people's opinion? Is that what matters most? Or is it the culture that we create that enables democratic engagement, which is about constantly knowing that you're part of a community, that you have a voice, that you are valued for who you are. And I think it's the latter. In our school, we do have mixed-age circle meetings that happen every week, and that emanated from a project on student voice that I worked on with Michael Fielding, who's here today. And we've run that in school over a period of 14 years. And that's part of a culture of an opportunity to speak up. But it's only one part. The most important part is the fact that I would like to think that everybody in my school knows that they're valued for who they are. One of the sessions recently, I've just got a slide to show you, at the beginning of the year, the children were talking about respect and what do we do to, what does respect mean? And what I love about the sessions is that the children just are completely free to share their ideas and to record their ideas. The Year 6 children lead the circle meetings. The adults attend as equal members of the circle meetings. The children from the age 6 through to 11 all attend. And they are sessions where ideas can flourish. Just 15 minutes every week. Very simple idea, but a very powerful idea about what happens when we listen. And alongside that, trying to offer a curriculum that is irresistible, because when the curriculum is irresistible, it's not just the children that can't wait to come to school, the teachers are excited to teach as well. So this is our Celtic roundhouse. We've built this in our field. We had a professional thatcher who did the roof. The children got involved in making the walls. Inside there are paintings that have been made with natural dyes. The oldest children in the school learn Celtic myths, and then they become the keepers of the myths, and then they pass that narrative tradition down to the younger children as they come up through the school. And it provides a different space. Because when you go and stand on our field, you can hear the kind of hum of a big motorway that's nearby, the M25. You can hear, it's a beautiful field, but you can hear the cars. As soon as you step inside the Celtic roundhouse, the atmosphere changes. For one thing, it's cold. There's no sun in there, although there is a fire pit in the middle. It's a fire pit. But just that change of place. And for example, children standing in the woodland as opposed to being on the tarmac, what a difference it makes. So spaces are important as well. And later on, we're going to go and visit the University of Cambridge Primary School. I was very much involved in working with the architects, a great privilege to do that. And one of the things that we tried to create in that school is a sense of a community looking inwards with an inner courtyard, but also looking beyond with a global ambition for what might be achieved in education. This is an example of student voice. This is a poster that was on the door. I came back into school one day, and on the front door of the school had appeared a notice about the stick shop. Bring us sticks, we will sharpen them. These are limited edition sticks. Workers are Oscar the manager, Bailey the stick manager, Jake the deliverer, Elias is a stick maker, Zoe is a helper, and then other people have written on top of this because they've said, hang on a minute, we're going to be part of this stick making factory as well. And this whole idea of hope you will like your stick. Actually in many schools, the idea that anybody would be sharpening sticks in their free time is totally off, that is just not something that you would do. Leave alone, plaster the schools with posters about hope you like your stick. Because people would be saying, oh, excuse me, we have health and safety worries here. Actually, it's important to sharpen your stick, I think, if you want a school that is democratic. And of course, it needs to be somewhere where we listen. And one of the things our school has become known for, because we don't group by ability, but we recognise that not all children are capable of doing things at the same time, because of course, thank goodness, children are all different. One of the things that we often do is to provide a range of tasks for children to choose from. And the children know that some of the tasks are more challenging than some of the other tasks. And they talk about challenging themselves. And this is really a fundamental part of how we are working in school, because we are saying to the children, it's not all about us, it's about how we work together to enable you never to feel bored, so that you're constantly able to challenge yourself. I don't want any child in my school to be looking across at the other table and thinking, I could do that, but they won't give me a chance. Or to self-limit and say, probably I'm not good enough, no one's chosen me. That kind of innate sense of why not, let's keep trying, that we thought about with Kayla and the violin earlier on. And as I mentioned, I've been very, very influenced by the work of Robin Alexander and dialogic pedagogy, and the idea that dialogue builds cognition. The more we explain our ideas, the more we test our thinking, the chances are the depth of thinking actually increases. And the relationship in that photograph between the teacher and the child. Again, if we had time, we could talk about it. That sense of shared respect and trust and joy in each other's company and talking about ideas that matter. This is why I'm so passionate about education. So I want to show you a film now of children in Year 1. These are 6-year-old children, and they're talking about mathematics. And the reason we made this film was because we've had a lot of Ofsted inspections in my school. I've actually had 9 Ofsted inspections since I went there in 2003. I have obviously been a very bad person in a previous life, but so far I have got away. I've had my 9 lives, mind you. I'm thinking this is it now. It's time I finished. So last year, although we'd been judged 3 times to be an outstanding school, we then got a phone call from Ofsted. They said, we'd like to come and see the way that you teach mathematics. And because it was a survey inspection of a subject, they gave us a week's notice. And I knew the children loved maths, and I knew the planning was all done, and I knew the teaching was great, but as a head teacher, you have to panic when the inspectors are coming. It's kind of the law. You have to run around going, oh my goodness, don't worry, it's all going to be fine. So I thought, what can I do? And we have a guy, Lee, who works in our school, and I said, let's go and talk to the children about mathematics, and let's just film what they say. So let's have a look at the Year 1 children, 6-year-olds talking about maths. In Year 1, do you do maths?
Yeah.
What do you like about maths?
It's fun, and you get to know how to subtract, add on, times and stuff like that. And take away. And add. 55. We do have challenges in maths, so you can go challenge 3, challenge 2, challenge 1, and they're all different, so you can challenge yourself at what maths. Challenge 1 is the easiest, challenge 2 is a little bit harder, but challenge 3 is even harder. Sometimes they have extra challenges, so if you think, I'm done with that part, I think I need a little bit more challenging, you can go into the extra challenge.
And if you still think that you need more challenge, then we have got some purple questions which have got really good answers.
Challenge 3 is a bit hard, because when we do fractions, there's lots of hard ones.
So what do you tend to do?
Do challenge 1,
Do challenge 1.
then do challenge 2, then do challenge 3.
So why do you think the teacher lets you choose like that? Why do you choose?
Because if you just got pushed to one challenge, you could think this is very difficult. I might need a bit more. I might need a low challenge so I can discover it a bit more.
Excellent, so 43 plus 26 equals? So go and change those answers for me.
Or if you find it easy, you need a higher challenge to try and try.
So has anybody here ever been bored in a maths lesson?
No, yes.
Oh, you have? Why were you bored?
Because I don't like doing fractions.
You said you've never been bored in maths. Why not?
Because it's just we have this Percy Parker thing which makes maths more fun. Yeah, we know some songs about it, and it helps you like learn your facts. Yeah, so you can sing the tune and you just basically get all this stuff into your head. It goes round and round and round.
Can you remember any of the tunes?
Yeah.
Can you do one?
He has the arms in the air with Percy. Wave the arms in the air with Percy. Wave the arms in the air with Percy. Wave the arms in the air with Percy. And count all the arms. 1 times 2 is 2 arms. 2 times 2 is 4 arms. 3 times 2 altogether is 6 arms. Wave the arms in the air with Percy. I'm saying this will get the arms.
How long have you been doing Percy Parker? Is that quite a new thing?
No, since we started times tables. Yeah.
Times tables in year 1?
Yeah.
Have you done Magic 10 in your class?
Yeah.
Tell me about Magic 10. What is Magic 10?
It's a bit more time to learn about maths in the afternoon. So basically after the register, you could do a little bit more practicing maths. Yeah, we get to sometimes do some more Percy Parker after lunch. Or we sometimes do a little bit more times tables, add in anything of maths. And if you sing so loud that the teacher can hear you, all of them, then you might get a sticker. Yeah. I love maths because it's really fun and we get to do our times tables with Percy and I love that. I like maths because we do recaps about adding. I love maths because we do fractions and it's one of my favourite things we do in maths. See you next time!
So one of the things I just love about that, I mean, it's completely, as you can see, it's completely unrehearsed. That was just as it was. I just asked them, do you do maths? And then they just did all this talk. The fact that they can talk so coherently about mathematics is symptomatic of a culture where they know that when they speak about things, they will be listened to and taken seriously. Because actually they're very young to talk about the concept of mathematics. And I love that there's a question where I say to Grace, why do you think the teacher lets you choose? And she really has to think about it and she says, because you have to discover it for yourself. So that mathematics is about her. It's not about because you have to do that because Miss says you've got to do it, or because that's what will give you the best grade, or that will move you onto another table. This is about discovering it, because I have to discover it for myself. If we have children at the age of 6 recognizing that learning in classrooms is about discovery for yourself, that feels like a pretty good place to be as far as I'm concerned. And of course, feedback is interesting how things happen in education and trends develop. The work of John Hattie telling us that feedback is really important has been interpreted in schools too often to mean pages of written dialogue between the teacher and the child, and the marking gets longer than the original piece of writing from the child. I don't think, well, I know that was not what was intended at all. I just want to show you an example. This is an example of some writing that was actually done in the 1950s, and Tim Brickhouse sent this to me. So let's just look at this together. This was a 9-year-old boy writing about his father. All the children in the class had been asked to write about their father. My father is on the broad side and tall side. My father was a hard-working man and he had a lot of money. He was not fat or thin. His age was about 30 years when he died. He had a good reputation. He is a married man. When he was in hospital, I went to see him every Sunday afternoon. I asked him how he was going on. He told me he was getting a lot better. My father was very kind and gave me and my cousin cigarette cards. He likes doing woodwork, my father, for me. And he likes a little game of cards now and then, or a game of darts. He chops the wood and saws the planks, and he's a handsome man, but he's dead. He worked at the rubber works before he died. The teacher, at the bottom of this piece of writing, had written, "You keep swapping your tenses." So the idea there was a halcyon day when teachers got it right and the feedback was fine, no. Here's another piece of writing. This is by Phoebe. Phoebe left our school last year. Phoebe was a child who found it very difficult to learn to read and write. She worked incredibly hard, but she found it very difficult. And when she was in year 2, She didn't achieve the level that children are expected to achieve at year 2. But by year 6, this is what she's writing. And the picture behind her writing is the picture that's the stimulus for the story. So let's have a look at Phoebe's writing. Her face is destroyed. She slouches her body, holding only a few bags. There she stood, looking at the train slowly passing by. Her face kept a frown. She had freezing cold, shaking hands, red as bold as a poppy. She felt distraught. The train gradually disappeared into the distance. Her emotion struck her. A tear lightly slid down her frowned face. She felt lonely, sad, and upset. She stood there in her small, thin layer coat, freezing cold, shivering. She continuously stood there hour after hour. She patiently waits for the next echoing sound of the train, repeating itself over and over again. Now, of course, we could say Phoebe also mixes her tenses. We could also say Phoebe is now a writer. And the point is that in our school, Phoebe's identity about herself as a learner is that it was quite tough. So when I talked to her as she was about to leave our school and I asked her to tell me about her experiences of school, she said to me, well, the thing is, I think we could all say that when we were first here, none of us knew what we were doing. And then gradually, over the years, you kind of start to think, oh, I can do this and I can do this. And then you realise, you know, I'm getting better and I'm able to do it. She hadn't got a story, her own story, which was, when I was first here, someone else had to sit next to me and do all my work for me because I wasn't good enough. She hadn't got a story about herself that said, I'm not very good at writing. She had a story that said, I found it hard. So going on to secondary school, actually, she just won a commendation at the end of last summer term. I found out for her first year in secondary school for what she'd been able to achieve. You know, her self-identity was one of, I'm going to keep trying my best and I expect people to help me, not I'm going to wait for someone to do it for me. And too often in classrooms, in too many schools, in the name of helping children, adults sit, or parents do the homework, and adults sit with children and complete the worksheet. And then they hand it in and the teacher says, well done. So Phoebe's view of learning is about Phoebe. It's really important for us that we're inclusive. So this notion of low threshold, high ceiling is really important because that way every child has an opportunity to engage in learning, but they won't all achieve the same things, but that's not the point. So in a writing task that our year sixes were doing recently, they were asked to write about themselves and to use metaphor and simile. So this is a poem that was done by Erdin, and as you can see, it's really short, but I'm just going to read to you what it says. I'm usually as happy as a dog. When I'm hyper, I'm as hyper as thunder and lightning. I'm as hyper as a fizzy drink popping up and down. If Erdin was here now, you would have met him. You would have noticed him quite a long time ago because he would have been bouncing around the place. But his teacher values his work, and she gives him feedback about his work related to what he's done. So she's valuing what he's done rather than saying, well, you've only written a couple of lines. Then in the same class, this is Christopher, and Christopher has written a poem about a glue stick. Who am I? I am a glue stick as stuck as can be. I am a garage, it's as tired as me. I'm so sarcastic as you can tell, the brightest of sparks, a ringing bell. I am a wizard, a master with words. I am like a plane, as high as the birds. I am a teardrop, the start of a cry, a door always open. So who am I? Now, both Christopher and Erdin responded to feedback from their teacher, but it wasn't pages of feedback, it was feedback that was specific, that enabled them to improve their poem. And the final draft of the poem that Christopher has written is the one that you see on the screen. And that was one that he wanted to write up to put in the library. Again, the intrinsic motivation, I want to do this because I'm a writer. We also owe it to every child to find a way through. This is Alice. Alice is a wonderful member of our school community. She's a total delight to us. She is a total delight. She is also a complete pickle because she doesn't always want to do things in the way that we want her to do them, and she finds transitions very hard from one activity to another. Once she's somewhere, she doesn't want to move somewhere else. She started writing in year 1. So this was the first picture that we had from her with some emergent writing. You can see, and she told us this was Grandpa, and we were delighted to see this picture. And we did a photocopy, and we gave it to Mum at the end of the day. And then the next day, we had a picture of Grandma, a bit more worried about Grandma. She was a bit of a geezer. I'm sure she's not. Anyway, there was Grandma. And then we didn't get anything in terms of writing for a while. And then Alice's mum came in, and she said, have you been teaching Alice to write the word boat? Now, at the time, we were doing, in year 1, we were doing a topic all about explorers. And we were talking about, Christopher Columbus and so on. But what had happened was, at home, Alice had got hold of a box of chalks that she wasn't supposed to have. And she took them up to her bedroom where she wasn't supposed to have chalks. And Mum was cross because there was a mess. And she was cross until she saw this, because I don't know if you can see on the slide, can you? The word boat, and there's a picture of a boat here. So Mum brought in this photograph and said, have you been teaching Alice the word boat? And we said no. And then when Mum went, we kind of sat Alice down and went, write the word boat. And no, she couldn't. This whole kind of sense of children will show us when they're ready what they're able to do. So it's about being patient, isn't it? This is a picture of Alice now in the beginning of year 3. This is her in a science lesson. You probably can't even notice where she is in the class, which is exactly the point. She is beginning to be an absolute member of our community and learning alongside the children. Her pace of development has been slower. But now the role model for her is this is what we do in class. And some children interviewed me just the week before last. We had a book launch at school. And the children were writing a review of the event so that they could send it to the local newsletter for the town. And Alice joined in with the other children to ask questions, and she'd got her reporter's notebook, just like everybody else, and a whole page of emergent writing, because that's what you do in your reporter's notebook, isn't it? And that sense of the role model being so powerful, as opposed to what happens when you're separated out. Really important. So constantly in school, what we're trying to do is to create a community that I would hope could be, because I'm a hopeless optimist, and I'm sorry, I am an optimist, but this sense that society needs to be better than it is. And if schools model what it can be like to be valued and known for what you're able to do, as opposed to a deficit model of what you're not able to do, whether you're the child or the teacher or the parent, actually, then I think that provides us with hope. And we need models of hope. Just have a look at this example here. This was one of our teachers, Cheryl. Her son, Harry, was given this homework by his school. And it was the homework that all the children had been given. He's in year 5. All the children were told that they had to learn the spellings on the sheet, and they had to use the spellings, even though, actually, I think probably Harry couldn't read the spellings. Had to use the spellings to put them into a piece of writing, and that's the writing at the bottom of the page there. And Cheryl said that took a long time. You can imagine, can't you, at a weekend, that took a long time because her son couldn't read the words. He'd been told this is what you've got to do. Here's another piece of work done by her son, actually on the same weekend, because he chose to write about a superhero called Cricket Man. If you just compare, this is Cricket Man, because Harry has chosen to do this. This is the homework that the teacher has chosen to send home to every child. I just say no more, Mrs. Peacock. Okay, let's have a look at reading. Oh no, this is Phoebe.
If you feel like you've hit a brick wall and you feel like you just still can't do that, then you also ask help for teachers, like from teachers, but also just think back from all the years that you've done and feel like when you first started, you weren't there at all, but then when you were in year 1, you were there, and then you learnt loads of things and you felt confident. So just keep working hard, and you'll soon find that you think you know everything, but there's still loads of things you can learn, but don't stop. Yeah, don't stop working as hard as you can, because it's really good to work hard and show your effort into every work that you do.
Wroxham's trying to do the best things for you. They try and help you with challenges and and successes. They try and think of a way they can help you. There's nothing you can't do in life. There's nothing you can't do in life.
So it is about high expectations. I just want to share with you a story of one particular child who was inspired to write. And this was because we had a visitor coming to school, an author called Anthony Brown, a picture book author. He's very, very popular. And we did a whole project in school with all of Anthony Brown's picture books that we could get hold of from the library. And we invited Anthony Brown to come to our school, and he agreed. And this was like, oh my goodness, Anthony Brown is coming to the school. This is phenomenal. And on the day that he was going to be coming, there was a knock on my door, and it was Ashley from year 4. So he was 9 years old. And he said, oh, Mrs. Peacock, today's the day that Anthony Brown's coming, isn't it? And I said, yes, Ashley. He said, yes, well, I would quite like an appointment, please. So I said, would you, Ashley? He said, yes, I'd like an appointment with Anthony Brown because I am an author, and and I'd like to share my stories. And he'd got a carrier bag with him, and it transpired that at home, Mum had been bringing back paper from packing cases, and he'd been writing stories about Mr. Wellington Boots. This has nothing to do with school. He'd been writing stories about Mr. Wellington Boot, and they were picture stories, and he'd been inspired by Anthony Brown. And Anthony Brown at that time was the Children's Laureate, and he said when he came, yes, of course, I'll meet with Ashley. And they sat and they had their lunch together. And then afterwards, Anthony Brown said to me, you know, Ashley has a real talent for writing. We should publish his work. So this is Ashley's book, The Amazing Adventures of Mr. Wellington Boot. And you can see it's a picture book. We typed up the text. It's very witty. It's actually very good. We wanted Anthony Brown to come back and do the opening of our bus, because we bought a bus on eBay for the library because we hadn't got enough room for a new library, so we thought, let's buy a double-decker bus, and I'll show you a picture in a minute. And Anthony Brown said, yes, I'll come back and do the bus opening when you decorated it all. So when he came back, Ashley had a pile of his books, and he sat beneath a tree near the bus and did book signings and sold his book to the local community. And for me, that's a sense of what happens when you have a collective ambition. And also, you know, why not? Why not do these things? Because we absolutely can, and such an important role model. I'm going to move on beyond this film because I don't think we've got time, sorry. Just to say, the children are very much involved in talking to their families about their learning. They write their own reports, and the teachers respond in written dialogue to the children. So these are documents that are produced several pages long. Other schools have started to do this because they find that instead of cutting and pasting comments from a computer, the parents and the children find there's much more meaning in a report that's written by the children themselves. The children engage in learning review meetings where they are talking about their own learning, where they talk about their challenges and their successes, and they prepare a presentation. The parents come, I'm there, the child's there, the child sits on my swivel chair in my office. We meet in year 5 and 6 in the autumn and the spring, then the child writes their report, and then in the autumn and the spring, then it's the final term of school. So by the time the children leave at the end of year 6, I've met with the children 4 times. I've heard them talk about their challenges and their successes. I've heard their parents give feedback. I've listened to the teacher. I've seen the children's work. So I'm not doing separate book scrutinies or going and monitoring quality of teaching. I'm listening to what the children are saying about their learning, because the child is the most important person in the room. So dialogue is at the heart of everything that we're doing. I'm just going to show you the bus, because I just
Hi, my name is...
need to see it. Sorry, Ezra, we haven't got time for you. But I do think this is an example of what happens when we believe in the art of the possible. So the bus that we've got on our playground was the result of a whole school project where we decided we needed more space, and we didn't know what we could do about that, and we didn't have much money, and so our deputy head said, let's think about buying a bus, and we went on the auction site and we bought the bus for £2,400. And when the bus arrived in school, a great big cheer went up because they saw it coming along the road, and it had been an auctioneer's bus. So, and the roof leaked and it stank of diesel, and I just thought, oh my goodness, what have we done here? Because it's a bus. and it's made of metal, and how are you going to put books inside a bus? But it was a whole community project. And one of the things that's really important, I think, is that one of the parents said to me, there's a big bus garage in Potter's Bar, and she said, thank you so much for recognizing things that are really important in our community. And I had never considered that that would be what it would be. And then we had parents who came to help to decorate the bus and to take out the seats and to put shelving in and so on and so forth. It became a genuine community project that captured the imagination. And I think if teaching is about anything, it should be about capturing the imagination. It should be about enabling children to believe that anything is possible. But we have to believe it first. And if we don't believe children can achieve amazing things, they won't either. I'm about to leave my school as a head teacher. I've been there 14 years. And my next small challenge is to establish a chartered college of teaching for this country. The government have provided a small amount of funding, and then it will become an independent organisation. And I just feel, well, you know, I could have just stayed in one school and carried on doing this and talking about it, or I could just try and take those principles that I've been sharing with you this afternoon and see if we just maybe we could recapture some heart in our profession and remember what it's like to believe in ourselves, to believe in our children, and to do amazing things. Thank you very much.
Alison, thank you very much for stimulating words and images, music, video, the whole lot. So very, very all-round picture of, you know, what's obviously a really fantastic project for the children. And I like that focus on the individual children as well, which I think really, you know, quite a lot of the time in research, you know, we're talking in abstractions, aren't we, in our seminars and parallel sessions, and it's really good to see the individual at the receiving end of all that. I think we've got time for a few questions before we head off to the University Primary School, and there's one over here.
Thank you very much. Often in the study of education, we think about geographical aspects, talk about space and place and importance of them. I was very struck by the references to time. I'm actually not a teacher by background. I've worked for many years as a street social worker, in which the concept of time just goes out the window. And we talk about rhythm, pace, talk about present tense functioning. Very interesting way of looking at time. I was struck by the references to ability as not being fixed, to the concepts of future and present, but also patience, which is temporal dimensions as well. And the time to be trusted and to be trusted, the time to flourish. And I wondered whether you really, this was an intuitive thing in relation to time, or whether there's something you thought perhaps more critically about. Just in my own view, the need to move beyond the dominion of clock time is absolutely essential in the present situation.
It's interesting, we've got the Shakespearean quote, "There's no clock in the forest," up in the dining area in our school. I think it takes great professional courage to take time over things. And also, it's about holding your nerve, you know, having the faith that things will come through. We're always after the quick fix too often in modern day society, but actually children's learning is complex and it's not linear. So there's a temptation, you know, through things like tracking systems for teachers to think that learning is linear and you just pace through it and everybody's got to be able to achieve the next thing by the next time you check in with your data drop, which is what they're now called horrifically. We've really tried to resist that, particularly with children where we know that learning doesn't come easily to them. So the notion that we're trying to find time to find a way through for every child is so important. And actually, in leaving Wroxham, one of the things that I think some of our parents are worried about, particularly of those children who have those additional needs, I think they really worry that whoever my successor is, will they give the children the amount of time they need? Because when you give them time, actually they can achieve beyond everybody's expectations. And like I was saying earlier, those are the things that all of us as professionals, those are the things I think that we will always value the most. So you're right, but it takes courage. And I think because if I was speaking to a room of head teachers are obsessed with Ofsted rankings because we've had to be, because you get sacked actually if your Ofsted ranking isn't good enough. But because we are an outstanding school, people would probably say, oh, well, you're outstanding, so therefore you can afford to give the time. But actually, in my first few weeks of being a head teacher at Wroxham, when the school was in special measures and things were in a parlous state, one of the first things I did was to say, we're going to have an art week, and every morning is going to be handed over to art. Not every afternoon, every morning for a week. Even though we'd got an inspector coming back at any point, I said, we need to do that. And so there is a bit of, is it courage, is it arrogance, I don't know. Because those are the kinds of things that actually embed really deeply, and then you can get the outcomes that everybody's seeking. But the irony is, if you chase the outcomes, they get further away, I think, interestingly.
Thank you. I'm very interested in the details of the weekly multi-age circle.
Okay.
Like when they meet, what are the issues and...
Okay.
Thank you.
So the weekly meetings are on a Tuesday at 10:15 until 10:30. There are 2 more groups than there are classes, so there are less children in the groups than there are in a whole class. It's about 25 children in a group. The teacher will say it's time to go to circle meetings. The Year 6s will have prepared the meetings the day before because the Year 6s chair the meetings. So they will go to their circle time room. One of them will have a notebook, one of them will be the leader of the warm-up game, another one will be introducing the topic for discussion. There'll be a game like, I don't know, Pass the Smile or something like that to warm everybody up, to welcome everybody to the group. Then there'll be news for the week. And this is because even in a small school like mine, there are 242 children, but actually children often don't get to know what's going on in the organisation. The teachers have a bulletin, the children might not. Almost always they wouldn't. So news, what's happening? We're going to have visitors. Mrs. Peacock's out again, whatever it might be. And then we have a shared topic for discussion, and the children will discuss that, but it could be anything. It could be our favourite picture books. It could be how we're going to manage football cards on the playground. It could be whatever emerges, and the Year 6s are the keepers of the agenda in terms of what emerges. And then if there are things that need to be discussed over a period of time, they will go back and say, we didn't resolve this, we need to go back and discuss some more. Sometimes we might have big pieces of paper that get put up in the dining room and the children will add additional ideas because it might be something that everybody wants to contribute to. It really depends what's happening. But it's just one part. It's one part. It's in a formalised way of saying everybody's voice matters. And the teachers contribute as well. But it's only one part. And I wouldn't say that was the reason our school is like it is, but it's a symptom of a school where it matters what you think, I hope. Thank you. Yeah, not a Friday afternoon, exactly. No, a Tuesday morning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Hi, I would like to hear a little bit more about the components of that successful transformation from being in special measures to becoming outstanding, and how you worked with the same group of teachers,
Yep.
bar one, it sounds like, and but what were you doing, what was the community doing to change the mindset so significantly? Yeah.
Okay, so the story of the transformation of the school from special measures to outstanding is the subject of creating Learning Without Limits, and we became involved in a research project with researchers from the university here coming into school. That was a brave thing to do. When you are a new head teacher and you don't know what you're doing, and the school's in a bit of a mess. And then researchers like Mary Jane Drummond call you up and say, would you like us to come in and watch what you're doing? Because you won't be labeling children, will you? It's quite terrifying. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, supposing I get found out. You know, I've always spent my whole career thinking someday they're going to find me out. And anyway, what happened was that essentially, when I look back on it, because when you're in it, you can't see what you're doing. You're just trying to respond, aren't you? Because things are happening all the time. But looking back on it, the key things that made the difference were small conversations between, often at the end of a long day, between colleagues, almost always focused on children. So not conversations about, I came in and saw your mathematics lesson and I noticed that your plenary was slightly too short or any of that sort of stuff. These were conversations about, why do you think it was that Edward wasn't able to engage? What else could we do to try and help Edward? And those kind of conversations are not about me as the head teacher saying, I've got the answer, but they were very much more about, pedagogy is fascinating. The curriculum is a way of engaging. How do we match the interests and the needs of the learners so that they achieve really highly in a way that's compelling? And how can I help together with the teachers to find ways in that will enable people to want to learn? So it was those conversations. And I also kept a leadership journal because our school was being researched. And I kept a journal for 18 months. And every weekend I would write about the week that had just gone and then look forward to the week that was about to happen. And I would write about the things that I was worried about or the things that were on the horizon. And then the following weekend, I would look back to what I'd written about and then comment on that. And when I began to start looking at that journal and look back at that journal, I realized that in my family, my sister's always been the one that's been the creative one. So Jenny's my younger sister. Jenny was always the creative one. Alison's the sensible one. So my identity was Alison's sensible, Jenny's artistic and creative. When I looked back at the journal, I realized that I'm actually very creative because there were loads of ideas about things. And it was often very much about things that I knew would appeal to children because they appealed to me. So things like, I went to a car boot sale one day and they were selling a big box of hats, all brightly coloured hats. And I thought, oh, they'd be great. I'll just buy them and we'll put them on the playground. Because then people can wear different hats and they'll be able to play games wearing different hats. That's a kind of sense of, it was £5 well spent. Do you know what I mean? So it's that kind of, sort of magic kind of, why wouldn't you want to do that? Why wouldn't you want to pick up a hat and play being a character instead of kicking someone? Just another way of looking, I guess. So, but mainly about dialogue, really, is the short answer.
Alison, I think that's a good point on which to close because in your CV I tried to convey the work you've done in professional development, and one of the most recent stages of that is to lend your experience and thinking to the new primary school, which University of Cambridge Primary School, the next point on our itinerary. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
I forgot also to mention that the latest edition, the Spanish edition of Creating Learning Without Limits, had just arrived in the library at lunchtime, which is there to join the Japanese edition. And who knows what other languages it'll find itself translated into. Practical housekeeping issue is that if you are going to the